unusually loud in their intervention. It's almost as if they didn't care that we knew what they were doing or that they wanted us to see what they were doing. It was very noisy, their intrusions in different institutions.
Stunning from FBI Director James Comey about Russia's brazen interference in the 2016 election. Let's discuss the testimony, what was revealed, and what it means for us going forward. We got former CIA counterterrorism official and CIA counterterrorism analyst Phil Mudd and Jack Barsky, former KGB agent and author of Deep Undercover. Good to have you both on the show. The suggestion by the FBI director that Putin/Russia's motivation was that they hated Clinton and wanted anybody else, and they were okay with Putin, but it was all about hating Clinton. Do you accept that?
He said that. I heard him say that, but he didn't provide any proof. I mean, this appears to be an opinion. It's a possibility, but you know, what do you do with this? At this point, you take it for what it is. But if there's any proof, it has not come out.
So why do you think? Well, what would give us a list of other possible motivations for why Russia would have motivated the hackings during the election?
I very much agree with the ambassador that you had on earlier on. Yes, Mr. Pickering. He was right on the money. It's all about destabilizing, all about creating noise. It's all about doing as much as possible to upset our democratic process, however you do it and wherever that leads. I don't think it was so much an attempt to influence the election one way or another, because the ambassador also said it could easily backfire. And as we look at this right now, it might actually be backfiring if our president might not be as inclined to be as friendly with the Russians as he might have been before.
Although he certainly seems to be trying to be friendly. He's been laying the groundwork for that. Phil Mudd, what is your take on this idea that they were loud and proud about this, the Russians, and also what we heard from our intelligence heads that, hey, they're going to do this again. It may be even worse in the next cycle.
You know, I think we've got to separate out the two. If we look at what happened in the American election and how aggressive the Russians have been in Europe, to anticipate that the Russians won't do the same thing during the next cycle if we cannot secure American candidates, I think would be ludicrous. That issue of loud and proud is different. I think we ought to be careful in this. In my 30 years in doing the intel business, I can tell you that trying to figure out what someone is doing, that is interfering with an election by stealing data, is a lot different than figuring out why. There's at least a few reasons why they might have been loud. Number one, maybe they weren't that good. Number two, maybe they wanted us to see it. Number three, maybe they didn't care. But to try to understand why, in the case of Saddam Hussein, for example, why he was evading weapons inspectors, we thought it was because he had weapons. Very poor reading of his motivations. Motivational analysis, Chris, is difficult, and I'd be careful in this case.
All right, so let's flip to the other major issue that we had during the hearings yesterday. Phil Mudd, staying with you, which was you heard Comey, you heard Admiral Rogers. We got nothing on the wiretapping. There's no basis for President Trump's allegations fingering President Obama, fingering wiretapping at all. And yet the White House persists in saying that, well, there's plenty more there still to know. Do you accept that?
Plenty more there? Excuse me, you have the NSA director and the FBI director saying no. Then you have the White House live tweeting and Congress coming back to the NSA and FBI director saying, hey, they just said that you said something, and the FBI and NSA directors live have to say what the White House is saying is incorrect. This case is closed. Sean Spicer's got his head in the sand because he doesn't have an answer. And the one question I have going forward, nobody's asking, Chris. Typically, the President of the United States sits down periodically, weekly, once every couple weeks, with the FBI director and the Attorney General and says, what threats do you see the United States, particularly ISIS threats? I want to know, based on the tension between the president and the FBI director, how many times they are having conversations that the president should be aware of about what's happening with FBI cases regarding terrorism in the United States. And my guess is those conversations aren't happening. That's a problem going forward.
Well, speculation, but if that's even close to accurate, what does that mean about how our White House is playing into Russia's hands in terms of the advantage of wanting to create what you called as, destabilization, of that being the goal of interference? If what is playing out right now, could it be any better for Russia?
Absolutely not. I think Mr. Putin is sitting back there and enjoying the show. It's a shame. And I don't believe there's blame just on one side of the aisle. It's on both sides. We are throwing bombs at each other. We are inwardly focused. We're very political when, in fact, we should be focused on national security. And the threat is much bigger coming from the outside than a Democrat posing a threat to a Republican and vice versa.
From what you understand of the situation and the, what they call the TTP, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that go into this kind of hacking thing, do you think it is likely that Russia would have coordinated with the Trump campaign, that there will be any proof that comes out like that the Russians needed Trump's staff's help to do what they wanted to do?
It's highly unlikely. This kind of a grand conspiracy, if it ever is tried, usually comes out. And at this point, as Director Comey said, there's no evidence of any kind. And,
well, he didn't say that yesterday. Comey said, I can't talk to you about it. It's an ongoing investigation.
Okay, but there is no evidence at this point. And these kinds of investigations, because of when we're talking about intelligence, there is layers and layers of deceptions. To get to the truth will take years or sometimes even decades.
Now, of course, the point of the investigation might be, did they know about Russian interference? And if so, who knew? Should they have said something? Let me ask you a last question here, though, Phil Mudd, quickly. The blow to credibility, to come out of something like that and then have Sean Spicer say, Manafort, he was really not a big deal in the election. Flynn, he was just a volunteer. Wiretapping, still very real. What does that do in terms of the ability to do what you were talking about earlier, to go as the White House to the intel community and have an integrity-based, conversation?
I think quickly that there's one issue that concerns me going forward. Remember, last year you and I were in Orlando, Florida, dealing with the Pulse nightclub shooting. San Bernardino happened relatively recently in the world of terrorism. Going forward in the next 6, 12, 18 months, the president will face a tragedy. If he comes out tweeting within an hour or two saying, I know ISIS did this and we're bombing in Syria, people like me, inside and outside intel, are going to say, I would have trusted Bush, I would have trusted Obama, I don't trust this guy, I need evidence. I think he's destroying his credibility.
Phil Mudd, thank you very much. Mr. Barsky, good to have you on the show. Appreciate you being here. All right, there is a lot of news. What do you say? Let's get after it.